looking at our finances, we realized we're not going to make it unless we turn back to our essential business.
So we went back to what we've always done, which is commercial fishing for halibut, except for now we go with the whole family.
We can either split up or we can stick together. And so we decided to stick together and find a way to bring the whole family to work.
Fishing days are long days, so there's times when the wind's not blowing, the fish aren't biting, so the kids run out on deck, get their schoolwork set up on top of the fish box and start doing their worksheets and their flashcards. And then the wind might blow and the fish might start to bite. We put away the school materials and focus on the fishing.
The first thing that they've learned on the boat is hard work, unloading fish at the wharf for the first time. And Hazel's, had to reach into the cooler and just dig through the ice, and her fingers were really cold, and she was in a lot of pain, and her eyes filled up with tears, and she's like, "This hurts." And I looked at her and I was like, "I know it does. Hard work sometimes it hurts."
We're definitely making less money than we would chartering, and working a lot harder for it. But we're catching fish, and this is how we supported our family for many years before the chartering. So we're back to what we know best, really. So we're happy to do it. Very happy to do it, and feel really lucky that we do have an alternative. There's so many people who can't pivot to the essential version of their job at this time. That's $100 on the line right there.
Yeah.
And you better work as a team to get this fish in and get it to market. That's how we're going to be eating. That's how we're going to be supporting ourselves for the foreseeable future.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.